Hello, my fellow individual. Did you know that I live stream 3 to 4 times a week right here on this channel? Well, now you do. The streams have been absolutely popping off as of late, and I'm sure that there are still some people that don't know that yes, I do indeed stream right here on YouTube around noon EST 3 to 4 times a week, and that is around the Destiny 2 reset time for those that don't know. I'll be live tomorrow with a Gambit stream because we have 𝗕𝗏𝗡𝗻𝗡 coming around, so please pray for me, and I hope to see you guys there. Anyways, thanks for clicking on the video, and enjoy the content. I think it's no secret that currently in the Destiny community, void weapons are all the rage, with the 𝗕𝗏𝗔𝗡𝗏𝗏's buff on hunters, 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗔𝗔𝗡𝗏 being so prevalent on titans, and even with warlocks you got 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗔𝗔𝗍, 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏, 𝗔𝗓𝗏𝗏, etc. You can kind of see why. A few months ago, I ended up making a stasis weapon tier list, and after that video absolutely popped off, I asked you all on my community tab what kind of element you'd like me to cover next. It was sorta close between Void and Solar, but in the end, Void took home the gold, and given its popularity this season, I figured now would be the perfect time for a video. So today I present to you all the top must-have Void weapons for PvE here in Destiny 2 right before Lightfall. We'll be going over a total of 20 plus weapons in this video, talking about why they're good, how to get them, and of course the perk rolls you might want on them. Remember to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and without further ado, let's jump into this. Throughout this video, we'll be tackling weapons via weapon category, so first up we have the Scout Rifles, and here resides the 𝗕𝗏𝗡𝗔𝗧𝗏 from the Kingsfall raid, and the 𝗕𝗏𝗡𝗏𝗏 from the Blindwell and Umbral focusing. Starting with 𝗕𝗏𝗡𝗏𝗏, this Scout Rifle is, as everyone knows, the OG. 𝗕𝗏𝗡𝗏𝗏 has pretty much always been regarded as one of the best energy scouts in the game hands down, and that still stands true to this day. It's a 200 RPM archetype paired with a god roll of rapid hit and explosive payload, and honestly that's all you really need to get out of this weapon. Taking a look at the 𝗕𝗏𝗡𝗏𝗏𝗏 though, this weapon is a 180 RPM, which is less ideal comparatively, but it makes up for that loss in RPM via the perks. We got picks like Adaptive, Stats for All, Explosive, Firefly, and 𝗕𝗏𝗡𝗏 in the first column, and in the second we have Repulsor Brace, One for All, Frenzy, Focus Fury, and Dragonfly. Crazy combinations here with Explosive Frenzy being a pretty good all-around roll, Firefly, Dragonfly for peak explosive damage, and Explosive Payload and Repulsor Brace being the perfect roll for all of the 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏 lovers out there. Now, staying on the same page of long-ranged primaries, let's talk about next the Pulse Rifles for today's list, and those being the 𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 from the core playlist vendors, as well as the Collective Obligation from 𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Starting off with the 𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, this weapon is just downright one of the best pulse rifles in the game across the board, which is crazy considering it's a ritual weapon. 𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is a 4-burst aggressive frame that comes with the roll Chambered Compensator, Flared Magwell, with Repulsor Brace in the first column, which can be paired with either Tricorn or Kill Clip. Obviously, 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 hunters will absolutely excel using this thing due to a constant flow of volatile rounds making Repulsor Brace constantly proc, as well as the second stack of Golden Tricorn for optimal damage output. This, as discussed earlier, can also be done on other classes like Titan with Heart of Inmost, as well as Warlocks using Controverse, making it a very versatile weapon regardless of what you're playing. The other pulse rifle here is Collective Obligation, and while I personally don't use this thing, I wanted to feature it on the list for those that have mastered the playstyle. Basically, Collective Obligation is a weapon that can take the debuffs from a target by shooting at them, and in an alternate fire mode, apply those same debuffs to other targets that you come in contact with. For example, I could leech, suppression, weaken, and volatile all off of one enemy that currently has those debuffs, proc my alternate fire, and then apply all 3 of those debuffs at one time to every target I shoot at with that magazine. It's a pretty insane weapon that can be extremely powerful when utilized correctly, so I wanted to make sure it got its mention here. Moving on from pulses, however, let's talk about some weapons with a bit of a charge to them, and those are the fusion rifles. Here I have the Taipan 4FR Linear, as well as the 𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and Snorri FR5 fusions as honorable mentions. Firstly, the Taipan. Do I really need to go over this one? It's probably the most accessible in-game weapon in the game due to it being tied to a crafting quest. It has a great god roll in the form of triple tap firing line, which can also be paired with the Vice Stinger origin trait to just make for an insanely effective meta weapon. It might not be the best linear in the game, but hot damn is it still near the throne. Now I also included some special fusion rifles here as honorable mentions, those being the 𝗵𝗄𝗃𝗏 from the Dawning, which can roll with Subsistence Reservoir, as well as the 𝗨𝗏𝗔 from the World Loot Pool, which rolls Compulsive Reloader and Reservoir. Now, I wanted to have these as honorable mentions for those that enjoy them, but if we're being honest here, let's just rip the band-aid off already and admit it that if you're using a weapon for ad clear, it might as well be a wave frame and nothing else. They're just way more effective at doing it than these fusion rifles ever will be. Please, my fellow fusion rifle lovers, put down the reservoir burst rolls and pick up chill clip fusions and PvE like the rest of us. You gotta get with the times. Now, going on back to primary weapons for a bit, let's talk about our next weapon category, the combat bows. Here we have the Le Monarch from the Exotic Kiosk, as well as the Under Your Skin from Season of the Risen. Firstly, starting with Le Monarch, this is hands down just my favorite bow in the game for PvE. It has built-in overload, which is perfect for in-game content. The Catalyst gives it Unrelenting, which helps with survivability, and Unrelenting is really easy to proc given the Poison Arrow's intrinsic trait, which allows you to not only poison targets that you shoot, but also spread that poison to others as well. Anyways, onto Under Your Skin, this weapon comes in as a precision frame and thanks to the perks, is the best you're going to get as far as Void legendary bows. It can get Archer's Tempo Explosive Head, or even Archer's Tempo and Successful Warm-Up if you're wanting insane arrows per minute. Nothing to dislike about this weapon, it comes from PsyOp Battlegrounds, is craftable, and has a fantastic god roll. Getting a little bit up close and personal, let's move on over to our next category, the submachine guns. Here we have the ever popular Funnel Web from the World Loot Pool, as well as the Unforgiven from the Duality Dungeon. Firstly, the Funnel Web. If you're watching this video the day it comes out on January the 9th of 2023, go to the gunsmith right now and buy this weapon. Like, please. 𝗵𝗔𝗃 is selling one of the best possible rolls on this weapon, the other of which would replace Adrenaline with Frenzy. But anyways, yeah, Funnel Web is basically the offspring of the Recluse from times past. It's a fantastic feeling weapon with good damage, a good origin trait, and all that jazz. Now, talking about the Unforgiven, however, we got some extra layers to peel back. While this weapon is harder to get a god roll of, I highly recommend Unforgiven over the Funnel Web, and I've been recommending it since day one. The perk rolls Unforgiven can get, like Demolitionist or Feeding Frenzy in the first column, combined with Adrenaline, Frenzy, Repulsor, or Golden Tricorn in the second, are just too insane to pass up. It also has a 750 RPM, which feels very similar to the 𝗵𝗄𝗃 SMG, and overall it is just a fantastic weapon for those wanting to lean into ability build crafting, which is basically all the rave in PvE now. Now, going over to the special ammo weapon type, let's talk about grenade launchers. With said grenade launchers being the Wilder Flight from the Spire of the Watcher dungeon, and the Deafening Whisper, which you can get from select weeks inside Dares of Eternity. Starting with Wilder Flight, this weapon is both the best energy spike nade launcher and the best energy blinding nade launcher, thanks to its archetype called Double Fire, which allows it to fire 2 shots per magazine. This allows you to deal more damage than other archetypes, and allows you to help negate the blinding nade damage nerf from a while back if that's what you're running. For blinding nades, I recommend autoloading combined with just about any final column perk, and for spike nades, you could go with Repulsor Brace, Danger Zone, or Demo, with yet again any final column perk as well. The archetype on this thing is insane, the perk selection is great, so what's not to love? Onward to Deafening Whisper though. Aside from Dead Messenger, Deafening is the only wave frame that can fire a void wave when shot. It has some pretty great perks overall. Lead from Gold and Ambitious Assassin are nice in the first column, with Unrelenting, Wellspring, or Autoloading being great in the final. I don't really recommend damage perks on wave frames since they're mainly used on red bar enemies that are going to die instantly, so I'd opt for more utility or ability based perks instead. Up next for the video, let's finally talk about auto rifles. Here we have the Reckless Oracle from Garden of Salvation, as well as the Gnawing Hunger as an honorable mention, which currently cannot be obtained since it was removed from the Dares loot pool with the most recent update. Starting with Reckless Oracle, apologies for the super old gameplay as I currently don't have one in my vault, but given the current landscape of ability builds in Destiny, Reckless Oracle actually shows up with a fairly good role of Outlaw and Demolitionist. Grenades are super strong right now, and that role is fantastic for anyone wanting to get easy volatile rounds on any class, regardless of exotic. It essentially acts as both a damage and ability perk when the correct fragment is equipped for those volatile rounds. Reckless is also a 720 RPM, which for me is perfect since that's my favorite archetype, so my 720 enjoyers may want to pick this up if they haven't already whenever 𝗁𝗃 is the farmable weekly raid. Of course, back to the honorable mention, Gnawing Hunger is a fantastic weapon which gets a similar role, that being Subsistence Demo, but it's hard for me to heavily recommend when it isn't even obtainable right now except for maybe 𝗁𝗏. If it becomes available again, it's an absolute godlike weapon, but yeah, it's gonna stay an honorable mention considering it has a fairly good replacement in the form of Reckless Oracle. Moving on from auto rifles, let's talk about a weapon type that's been seeing a lot more love as of recent, and that is the trace rifles. Here we have the Hollow Denial from Season of the Haunted, as well as Ruinous Effigy from the 𝗵𝗔𝗂'𝗏𝗏, both as honorable mentions. First up, we have Hollow Denial. Normally when you're using a trace rifle, you're probably also going with a double special kind of loadout, which currently are fairly niche in the community, hence the honorable mention tag. I still wanted to mention it, however, because Hollow is a fantastic pick. It can get a roll of Lead from Gold or Adaptive, combined with Repulsor Brace or Killing Tally, making it out to be a really great weapon overall. Also, as you saw, I included the Ruinous Effigy here, and had Bungie not nerfed this thing a while back when it was introduced, this would just be a full-on recommended must-have. Unfortunately though, Bungie nerfed it when in my opinion it absolutely did not need it, and they sort of ruined an exotic that was both fun and effective at the same time, which makes me sad. For those that don't know what it does, it essentially turns enemies into these little void basketballs when you kill them, and you can in turn pick those balls up and dunk them on other enemies for explosive damage, or even block with the ball for AoE tick damage. It's a great exotic, and I truly hope that Bungie gives it the buff it deserves. Up next from trace rifles, let's talk about a weapon category that's getting a lot of attention right now, the machine guns. This is mainly due to Retrofit Escapade from this season, but on this list I also have featured the Corrective Measure from 𝗿𝗏𝗃 and Commemoration from Deepstone. Firstly, Retrofit Escapade has been so talked about as of late thanks to its DPS output, with Gerfalcons giving volatile rounds anytime a player needs them, paired with the Retrofit's RPM and overall bullet damage. This creates a very unique interaction, causing it to do crazy amounts of damage, and crafting this weapon with a 4th times and target lock roll is your best bet to get the most out of it. Now for a more general use machine gun, we have the Corrective Measure. This one is great for ability centric builds thanks to it rolling Demo in the first column, and can be paired with Adrenaline, Thresh, One for All, and even Firefly. Finally, we have Commemoration, which got a perk refresh this season, and it just has great perks across the board, some notable ones being 4th times, Focus Fury, as well as Reconstruction paired with a damage perk or even Repulsor Brace. Back to the special weapon slot, let's talk about a weapon type that continues to just sort of be mid, and that is sniper rifles. Now, here we have the 𝗵𝗔𝗃, which comes from the World Loot Pool, as well as the Frozen Orbit from Crucible. Starting with Frozen Orbit, this weapon is about as close as you'll get to the Energy Succession at this point in time, as well as it being a spiritual successor to the Trophy Hunter Sniper from Dawn. It gets rolls like Clown, Autoloading, Lead from Gold, and Triple Tap in the first column, all of which are best paired with Vorpal. It's a pretty great general purpose sniper rifle and is fairly slept on. Now, we have the 𝗵𝗃 up next, which is essentially your last ditch effort, I need extra DPS kind of sniper rifle. I remember using this back during my Vow of the Disciple day 1, and I highly recommend a roll of 4th times with either Focus Fury, Vorpal, or Firing Line. Now moving on, let's get back to the heavy weapon slot and talk about swords, because this might be a controversial one, but I genuinely only recommend the other half here. The Iron Banner sword is gimmicky at best, and the Falling Guillotine is just a shallow version of its past self. The other half, on the other hand, provides great movement tech in the form of Eager Edge, whether that just be through a normal swing or a skate of some kind, which can be paired with perks like Frenzy or Repulsor Brace. If I'm running a sword, it's almost always going to be this one. Either that or the Stasis Dawning one, which just rolled back around. Or, of course, unless I'm running Lament, but that's exotic. Anyways, the other half is really the only sword that I recommend. You may disagree with me, you probably will disagree with me, but I genuinely believe that the other half is the only void sword that you would ever need. Anyways, finally making our way to the final weapon category of the video, here we have the hand cannons, or should I say hand cannon, as we only have the palindrome in this category. Bungie, we desperately need more void hand cannons if the best I can recommend is one people can't even get anymore. The new 𝗵𝗛𝗏 one is a 180 with perks that don't really warrant its use, the Trials one this season isn't that good, and the bottom dollar is a super slow and sluggish 120 RPM. Give us a proper void hand cannon, please, I beg of thee. Regardless of my mini rant though, if you have an Overflow 1 for All or Stats for All 1 for All roll on this weapon, then you're golden. Otherwise, well, you don't really have much better options out there, so here's hoping that Lightfall fixes that. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for today's video. Those are all of the top must-have void weapons pre-Lightfall that we currently have in Destiny 2. I'm sure I missed out on a couple favorites. It's almost impossible for me to make sure that I mention everything. I guess since we are talking about potentially missing out on favorites, maybe I'll just throw in a surprise little tractor cannon, you know? I mean, you know, my boy tractor cannon, he gets slept on, I'm telling you. Like, not enough people use tractor cannon. I'm not really recommending it because it's void as much as I am necessarily the utility behind it. But yeah, just a little, you know, tiny surprise shout out to tractor cannon. Why not? But if I did miss out on any of your guys' favorites, please let me know in the comments down below. I am an in-game player with almost 5,000 hours in this game, and it is very possible that I don't use the same weapons that you guys use, and you guys might be kind of sitting on some gems that I might not know about. So definitely make sure to let me know in the comments down below and talk amongst each other as to what your favorite guns are. Anyways, if you did enjoy the video though, just a subtle reminder to please like the video and subscribe if you're new, as those are both completely free ways to support the content that I create on YouTube, and I would really appreciate it. And before ending things off, I just want to give some special thanks not only to those that watched all the way through to the end, but also to my Patreon supporters and YouTube members. For Patreon, shout out to Admis, Vile, John, Serenity, and BoomerNoob in Tier 2, as well as Austin, Cinco, and 𝗏𝗄𝗎 in Tier 3. And for my YouTube members, we have Bluesman, Clear, Imposter, Angel, Ben McClellan, Hank the Tank, Mayhem Gaming, Nimble Fox, Mamimi, Peak, and Serenity once more. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce that. Anyways, with that said, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.